Today I'm gonna go over the PSU I built over the years. We will start from the oldest and see how I used to build stuff many years ago, and then go over the newer stuff up to the most recent PSU I built. Let's start from some old stuff. This enclosure is something really meant for outdoor electrical installation, but when I started building stuff I really didn't know any better, so let's see what's inside. Ooh. So first of all, this display and this stuff comes from a super cheapo Chinese digital meter. It doesn't really display the right voltage, but I just wire it in just for kicks. The real stuff goes in here. So let me see. This gonna be our main transformer. I think I took this and this board on the left out of you can see there are the big caps, and there should be also this rectifier here probably. I know here there is the main rectifier probably. So what I did basically, yeah, you can see it's a Fender. It was a Fender amp. I just cut out the power supply section, and I got those voltages, which I think are gonna be around like 25 volts most likely. So on this board we have a switching voltage regulator with an appropriate inductor, and here we have the IC there is ICL 7660 or equivalent. There's some filtering going on, and probably what these two transistors do, they generate a higher frequency clock to make this IC work at higher frequency. Because if I remember correctly, this one I bought a model which didn't have a high enough frequency rate, and so what happens is that it was incredibly noisy to use for audio application. By adding a separate oscillator, I make this order faster. It's less efficient, but at least it's not noisy at all. Here there are some pots. What I think they do, well, I'm pretty sure they do, is they change the resistance. They work around this switching regulator so they can get different voltages of output. What this toggle switch do is it changes between the regulator being controlled by these two pots and a standard 9 volts output for this DC. Then on top we also have I think it's positive, 0 or common, and negative voltages. Yeah, actually I thought it could be worse as a build quality. I'm not really sure I needed this 3-prong cord, but well, I guess that's what I like. And let's try to fire it up. Let's see if it still works. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, this display is not accurate at all. Let's see what we get here on the output. Okay, yeah, 9 volts, 0.15, which is pretty good. I think if I gonna move this switch, it should give us, yeah, a different range. So now we can control the voltage from with these spots. I guess this is the coarser one. It goes up to 22, and this is like more fine tuning, maybe. Well, let's lower. Let's see. Let's go a bit lower. Yeah, this is this second pot is the fine tuner, while this one is the coarse. And let's see what we get on the negative side. Yeah, we get -6. Yeah, I don't think it goes all the way, because the ICL 7660 is gonna eat up some voltage. Well, it goes to still goes to -18. Not really stable, because it outputs a really small amount of current. Yeah, it's more stable at lower voltages. Oh, this thing still works, not too bad. And we can always switch to our 9 and -9 with just the flick of the switch. Let's pass to the second PSU. Okay, this is gonna be the most rudimentary thing I built. I think there's just a transformer inside, which I scavenged from somewhere else. It only has a 2-prong cord. Yes, no stress relief. No, okay, I did a bit of stress relief here in this kind of crude way. And he only has an on-off switch. He has some holes. And let's see what's inside. I think I used this enclosure to make my first pedal. What was my first attempt to make a pedal? In fact, you can see here used to be the push button to turn it on, and probably here was a potentiometer. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Okay. I didn't remember this. Okay. So. Okay. I guess I took 2. I think I took these 2 adapters, I put them in parallel, added some filtering, which I tied down like this. I probably got these really big caps also from an amplifier. Let's see what it says. It's free, if you can see it, it's 3300 microfarad at 35 volts, and I had 2 also in parallel. Here is a bridge rectifier, and here gonna be the linear voltage regulator. Actually, I don't know how much these were putting out, but what we are getting out, it's should be just 9 volts. Yeah, this is really basic and simple. I really didn't remember I put 2 of these bricks in parallel. Let me see how much voltage they put out. Let's get some alligator clips. Okay, let's be careful not to touch anything inside. Let's see how much we get. Oh, Okay, it's a bit more than 10 volts. Okay, let's unplug everything. Let's also shorten the caps. So then let's see how much we get out from the rectifier. Okay, we are ready to check the DC output. Okay, yeah, that's about right. So this is the output from the rectifier. We go then of course into this linear voltage regulator, and then we come out from there, where we should have, hold on, I'm gonna turn it off again. On. Yeah, 9 volts, pretty sharp. Okay, that's good. I actually don't know how much how much power this thing can output, but probably it shouldn't be too shabby. Next PSU. Now it's the turn of this little guy. This is a really cute project I did for a DC to DC converter. So I get in with a standard USB, I think it's micro USB, and I get out with two separate 9 volt DC power for pedals. Let's see. So the idea behind it is that I can power it with any USB power supply. I can power it from batteries they give away, like this one. I got it for free with my cell phone last time I changed contract. And so I, for example, in this case, I can charge both my cell phone here, and I can still power my pedal board from here. Or you can just power it from your computer. The hardest thing was to fit everything in this really small enclosure, and it was hard to get it like the 3D form factor, because you have this one on this side, this one on that side, so that was a bit tricky. Let's see what I have inside. It's just I go from the USB input, I go to two DC to DC converters. Let's see, you can see it. So I have two. They are different because this, at first I installed both the same as this, but one burned for some reason a few months ago, and I don't really know why. I mean, you cannot know what's inside this DC to DC converter. They just give you a data sheet with really little info and just the power, stuff like that, but you don't really know what's going on inside. And yeah, it really died. So I changed from this one to this one. This one actually is I think it was a lot more expensive. This one is a Japanese Murata. Let's see if I can get it to focus. And this is actually supposed to output like something like more than 200 milliampere. This is only rated at 100. That's why you see 1 and 2 here. This is 100 or so milliampere, and this is 200 milliampere. And this thing, yeah, except for burning on me one day with no warning, it's working pretty wonderful, and it's so small I can just fit it anywhere. I can power it from that power pack. Let's see if I can get it right. Yeah, as I said, the hardest part was fitting this in this really small enclosure. The two outputs are isolated, So but as you can see, I started from the really big first power supply. It was completely non-isolated because my power requirements for my pedals are pretty small. Then I heard like, well, you should have isolated power supply. Everybody says that, and even though my pedals don't really require it, I made myself this really small one, which has two isolated power supply, which sometimes sounds useful when you use pedals from I don't know, not super high quality control manufacturers. And this I also use it, so you can see like you can get any USB power. Tak. Of course USB has a problem of up and down, but if I fire it up, tak, and I can have two isolated power supply, one 100 milliampere and one 200 milliampere. Cool. Let's go to the next one. So this is my latest project, and I got this enclosure as a sample from Takachi, which is the factory that manufacture most of my ZenZero electronic pedals. And I was like, what can I do with it? And I was like, well, let's do a power supply. Let's so the case, this enclosure is pretty cool. It's pretty heavy duty. The only problem is I found drilling these aluminum plates on the on both ends. It's pretty dangerous because they are super sharp and it's not very easy. Especially, well, of course, getting like a square hole is always a problem. But yeah, let's see what I put inside. It's closed with X screws. Let's see. As you can see, I have a fused plug here. I really like this standard plug, which is common on PC and whatnot, because you can always find a cable wherever you are pretty much that's compatible with it. Even when I went to Europe this summer, I can just dig up one from my old PC at my parents' house and I could use it easily. Oh, it comes apart like that. Okay, so here we have input. I tried to make a good connection for the earth. We go to this actually pretty old switch, and then we go to this. What this is a oh, there is a hair here. Good. It's a PSU. I scavenged from a time machine, an Apple time machine. It's one of the good ones, and I was able to find online what the output pin were, and I have something like 1 ampere of 12 volt output, and something like 2 ampere of 5 volts. So the 2 ampere of 5 volts I get, I think, here from this white cable, this white wire, and they just go straight to the 2 USB here. While the 12 volts here, they go, I have here 3 Traco DC to DC converter from 9 volts, my mistake, from 12 volts to 9 volts, and this will be the these 3 isolated 9 volts power for pedals, and I think they are 300 milliampere each, while this one it's coming from this linear voltage regulator, which is worked by this potentiometer here, and it goes from about 6 volts to 11. It actually sounds best when you want to starve a pedal, like a fuzz or something. For example, our red crown sounds sometimes better if you starve it a bit, you go down to 6 volts and stuff. So I was like, well, let's just have this extra option. It's not isolated from the power supply, but it's still isolated from all the other ones. So yeah, it's basically isolated because the transformer is isolated from the wall, so I guess it still counts as an isolated power supply, just one that you can regulate. And one cool thing about this enclosure is these rails, and I was able to just attach this perforated board to these rails using these X screws. It's pretty neat. So let's put this back together and I will try to power it down. So we are a standard 3-pronged cord. So let's check the output. Okay. We have 947 without load. One thing I forgot to mention is that at the output of each of the DC to DC converter, I installed a resistor in parallel with this DC output. That's because by checking the datasheet of Vostraco DC to DC converter, they were really not regulating until there was a minimum of load. With no load, they will give up and like 12 volts, something like that. And that could be a real problem for pedals, especially my pedals that consume something like 3 milliampere or some really small current. So I had to put this extra resistor, which is a fixed load, which is basically consuming a small amount of current all the time, so that I can get a better regulation of it. If I put a real load on this output, I will probably get something closer to 9 volts than this a bit high 9.5. Let's check now this one. This other output where I can regulate between 6 and I think it goes up to 11 or so. Let's see, here it's 10. Yeah, you can see here about in the middle I'm on the 9, so that's good. I actually calculated this so that this would happen. And minimum it goes down to 6 and maximum we go up to 11 volts. Yeah, so it's not the biggest range, but it's still it can still be useful. And straight up it's like, I mean, it's like between 9 and 10, so that's okay too. I can just use it as an extra 9 volt output. As for the USB output, let's see. I think I tested it before, it just works fine. I can charge, for example, the battery from before. So these are all of my power supply so far. If I have suggest something, I would say just buy a good quality power supply for your pedal board. On the other side, with this specific power supply, I got like an extra USB charger, which you wouldn't get normally with any, I think, pedal board power supplies. And for this one, I still think this one is pretty practical. I mean, you can just use like a normal adapter in the wall, but this can work off a notebook or of a power pack like this battery here. So I still think this is pretty practical and it looks cool. So there you have it. Till next time, It's been Giulio from ZenZero Electronics. See you soon.